So may I call our Dean, Dr. S. Manivanan, to welcome the gallery.
Good morning once again to all the participants and respected Chief Guest Session Speaker Dr. Praseeda, joining from SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Vadavalli campus. Really, I'm happy to welcome Dr. Praseeda Madam, who was given her acceptance in joining our short-term training program and enriching us with knowledge. The topic is qualitative and quantitative method, really going to be useful for all our research students. Apart from her acceptance, she has given a lot of inputs in terms of bridging the gap between the topics what we have selected. Especially, I must convey my thanks to her for giving a wonderful idea about how to proceed with this STTP when we were planning at the earlier days. Thankful, Madam, for giving input as well as accepting our invitation and to be part of our program and sharing your knowledge with us. I welcome you wholeheartedly, Madam. Of course, participants, this is going to be another interesting session. As usual, my humble request is hold your questions. After we say yes, you please post in the chat box. I request all the participants to adhere to the timing. I think we can start immediately. Thank you, Vijay. I think you can introduce the chief guest to the audience.
Yes, thank you, sir. It's really a great pleasure in introducing Dr.C.Praseeda, Professor, Department of Management Studies, SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Chennai. Dr. Praseeda did her BA in English Literature from Andhra University, Masters in Human Resource Management from Andhra University, MPA in Andhra University, and her doctorate in Andhra University in the year 2009. Her professional experience, she has over 26 years of total teaching and research experience. She started her career as a lecturer in KGRL College, Andhra Pradesh. Then she worked as an assistant professor in IIAM, Visakhapatnam, Andhra Pradesh. Then as an associate professor in Paida College of Engineering and Technology in Visakhapatnam, Andhra Pradesh. Then as an assistant professor in Geetham Institute of Management, Visakhapatnam, Andhra Pradesh. Then as an associate professor in SRM B School, SRM University, Chennai. And as an associate professor in College of Business Administration, King Saud University, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Then as an assistant professor in SRM B School, SRM University, Chennai. Currently, she is a professor in Department of Management Studies, SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Chennai. Her doctoral guidance, one awarded, submitted for adjudication is one, and currently she is guiding 7 research projects. She's attended over 34 conferences. She was a chair session in 2 conferences. And she's attended over 17 FDP and workshops. She's been invited as a resource person in many academic institutions. And she's also organized many events for her department. Her publication details, she has published over 20 research papers in journals and 5 research papers in books, and she's published 1 book. Her areas of interest, human resource management, corporate social responsibility, gender issues, and language and communication. Some of membership in professional associations, HRD Network, National Institute for Summer Management, Honorary Additional Secretary in NIPM, Indian Science Congress Association. So on behalf of Dr. MGR Education and Research Institute, we really thank her for gracing us with her presence and wish her good luck for her future endeavors. I request Praseeda ma'am to take over the session, please. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dean Manivanan sir, for his very graceful welcome address. Of course, I thank Vidya for introducing me. In fact, looking at all those details once again, it's like, did I do so much?
Thank you.
It's been a long journey. So thank you very much for that very, very nice. Before I start sharing my screen, let me just talk to the participants a little bit. I hope all of you would try to pay a little attention because we are talking about a research which is very different from the usual quantitative research that we see in our regular, PhDs or publishing papers and things like that. In fact, in the last session, there was one participant who was asking, what do we do about English literature? Maybe I can answer that a little because I've done my BA, that is my undergrad in English literature. And later, I don't know why I shifted towards management, but I did, and it was a happy coincidence for me. So using management concepts, how we can actually try to bring about research in literature, background. One very perfect methodology is qualitative research. And today we are going to talk about qualitative research. So with this, let me share my screen. Ganesh sir, can I do that?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, your voice is a little bit breaking when you're speaking.
Okay. So can you see the screen now?
Yes, ma'am.
I've done a full screen. Is
Yes.
it visible?
Yes, ma'am. Visible.
The voice, is it okay?
Yeah, now okay, ma'am.
Right. The task given to me today was I need to talk about qualitative research and quantitative research. But as I was talking with Dean Manivanan sir, there were a number of presenters who are actually going to deal with quantitative research. Like for A.G. Srinivasan sir, he tried to tell us different aspects of taking up data cleaning, sampling. Some of you raised questions about thumb rule in sampling. Maybe I can give you a little insight into this towards the end of my presentation when I go towards quantitative research. Because recently one of my scholars did her synopsis presentation and she was asked the same question, like how do you judge the adequacy of your sample? And is there a thumb rule? So that was the question which was raised and we answered it and we did a little of research into it also. So I'd like to tell you towards the end. Similarly, I'm not going to touch on quantitative research totally, but I would like to give you a little roadmap of what should a beginner do. Like, how should you actually identify your sample? How should you test the normality of your data? How should you go forward in case it's a probability sample or a non-probability sample? Then how do you go towards making your instruments strong? Cronbach alpha, many of us know, but when to actually use Cronbach alpha and what variables to actually use Cronbach alpha, and then going forward with how do you confirm your tool using either a factor analysis, if it's a tested tool or a non-tested tool, and going further with confirmatory analysis, discriminant analysis, and so on. All this will be basically just a roadmap. I cannot go into detail of anything because my focus will be more into qualitative research. As I was mentioning to again, Dean sir, qualitative research is such a big area that a session of 50 minutes or less than that, in fact 40 minutes is very difficult to take up. But I'll try to do my best, and I hope you are with me all through the session. Okay, so what is qualitative research? Now, quantitative research talks to us in numbers. It tells you if you have a problem and you have a particular instrument with which you collect the data and you crunch the data, you put the data through different tests, different kinds of models, and you crunch the data and you try to come to some kind of conclusions. But let us understand that world is not just made of numbers. There are a number of aspects which cannot be numerically boxed into a particular shape. We are talking about pluralization of life worlds. Now that's a very fancy word, but in simple, for example, the world, world as such has a number of social structures. The social structures may be related to income. The social structure may be related to a family or a marital status, or to an institution, or to a religion, or to a region. You have a number of social structures, and these social structures today. Yes.
Ma'am, please come closer to the mic and speak. Yeah, it's getting break.
Okay. Is it okay now? Should I use the earphones? Is it okay, sir? Ganesh, sir?
If you have headphone, you please use it, ma'am.
Just a second. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Go without the headphones, sir, because somehow it doesn't seem to be working. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
So we are talking about different social structures and which are becoming more and more important today because there is a lot of pluralization in the world. I mean, you are able to reach out to different countries, different communities, interact with different people, and the diversification of world has become very, very understandable to us. I mean, today, as a student, you can understand the culture of American life, or let's say an Australian culture, or let's say an Arabian culture. People are moving across boundaries, across continents. There are so many issues which are created due to diverse cultures. In fact, the scholar who was making her synopsis presentation was making a presentation on the impact of culture on team performance, where the team is constituted of Japanese employees and French employees and Indian employees. It's a French-India collaborative organization. So in which she took both the employees and tried to understand where do they react from? What are the cultural movements from which they try to come forward, or they try to assess a situation, or they try to respond to a situation? Other than that, there are a number of sensitive concepts like, infant mortality, child marriage, living relations, or let's say a concept of rape or abuse, any such thing where trying to give a questionnaire to the person is not acceptable. The person will never be able to write yes or no, or give ratings such as highly agree, highly disagree. These things are not possible, especially when you're talking about very, very sensitive subjects. Similarly, there's something called non-quantifiable aspects. You ask a manager on what basis have you taken a decision. He will say that, yes, I have taken a decision on the trend analysis of the last 5 years or last 10 years, or on the sales records of last 5 years or 10 years. But ultimately, there is something called intuition. There is something called hunch. And that actually tries to give that final cap on the decision. Try to estimate the hunch in terms of numbers. Try to give intuition a numerical value, becomes very tough. So how do you understand the value of intuition? How do you understand the strength of a hunch? Now, these are like sensitive, very high risk areas like religion, politics, not easy to give a question, not even advisable to give a question. So how do you do this? This is where qualitative research comes into action. A very, very simple table of what is the difference between qualitative and quantitative research. Of course, there are always the champions of qualitative research who say that all research ultimately has a qualitative grounding, like Don Campbell. On the other side, there is, Fred Kurlinger says that there is no such thing as qualitative. Now, either it's 1 or 0. Now, there are many, many arguments which have come with regard to qualitative and quantitative. But basically, let us try to understand what is qualitative research. Qualitative research aims to describe a phenomenon. See, you finish the total number crunching, you collect data, crunch, use regression, use SEM, use PLS, use process macro, whatever you do, you finish that. And ultimately, when you're trying to draw insights, when you're trying to explain a rejected or accepted hypothesis, when you're trying to say that, yes, I have a p-value of 0.0 or a p-value of 2.5, why? When you come to explanation of that why, you are going qualitative. You are going into finding out reasons to justify this why. So what is the job of qualitative research? It gives a detailed, comprehensive description. Researcher, when you are starting with the qualitative research, you only have a hazy idea of what you're doing. Whereas in a quantitative research, you create a model. You go through the whole review of literature, you identify the different models, you identify a novel variable, you create a model, you have a proper tool to test the model, you know who's going to be a sample, you start. that is not so very cut and dried in a qualitative research. In a qualitative research, we don't know much as to what we are doing or how we are doing. We start with a small intuition, with a small idea, and as we go forward, it moves. Similarly, it is recommended, generally qualitative research is recommended during the earlier phases of research projects, especially when you're going for mixed methods of quality plus quantitative methods. Then the design of qualitative research unfolds as the study is moving forward. The qualitative research also develops in its design. You can't say that I'm going to start with a causal design. You can't say that I'm going to start with a descriptive design. You can't say that I'm going to start with a quantitative design. No, you can't say all these things in qualitative research. Your design will unfold as your research is going forward. Similarly, the researcher's data instrument are very, very unique instruments. We'll discuss them. Most of the data collected is not objective, it's subjective. Subjective, where there is a possibility for participant bias, where there is a possibility for investigative bias. Of course, there are methods to reduce the participant bias and investigative bias, but ultimately, no qualitative research is 100% bias free, not possible. Even in quantitative research, A.G. Srinivasan sir was just pointing out, there is no data which is 100% perfect. There will be at least 1% of error. And that is why we say that the confidence level is 99% or 98% or 95%, where you are accepting that there will be certain problems with the data to the tune of at least 1%, or let us say 2%, or let us say 5%. So also in a qualitative data, because data is subjective, there is no possibility of a 100% bias-free data. But qualitative data is rich. You collect a lot of information, which might be emotion-based, which might be, based on different thinking patterns. And of course, it's time-consuming. Sometimes there is a possibility that you become immersed in the subject matter. You yourself become immersed. Maybe to take this further, I'll just give you a small example. We have a vice chancellor in India who started his career as an assistant professor in Andhra University. Later, he went on to become the vice chancellor of 3 universities in the country. And he was the person who wanted to do research for a particular gang of robbers. There is an area in Andhra called Stuartpuram, which is known for resident robbers. These are people, even movies have been made on them. These are people who professionally are robbers. They are caught, they are taken by the police, they are put in the jails, and then they serve their sentence, they come back, they take up the same expedition. Take up the same occupation. So this professor wanted to find out what actually motivates them, what actually they do. Why do they do this? Why don't they go for a formal education or for a formal job? What has made them become like this? And why is it that they are continuing something which was started by their grandfathers? So to do this, to give a questionnaire is impossible. So he went qualitative. He went and stayed with them. He went and he told them, I'm a professor, I want to study you. He went and stayed with them. He participated in everything with them. And one day, very, very fortunately or unfortunately, these people were going on a train robbery. And they said, Professor, you come, you get to know how a train robbery happens. And this man was like, okay, let me see. So he went. He went along with the participants for the robbery. And it so happened that when the police actually came, the robbers disappeared because they know how to do it. Whereas the professor was caught. When the professor was caught and taken to the police station, he was like, I'm a professor, and he was trying to give his credential, but the police was not ready to believe him. And ultimately, he had to call to the VC of Andhra University and testify his credentials, and he was left. And what I'm trying to tell you is, qualitative research goes to that level, where you become a part of your study, where you immerse yourself into your study. Because you are not trying to explain a number, you are trying to explain a mindset. You're trying to explain an emotion. You're trying to explain a motivation which comes from inside. Yes, there are quantitative methods which do it, but those quantitative methods also need qualitative support, without which it is impossible to do it. So why do we do qualitative research? To find out why, how, and in what way of a particular phenomena. Mostly it's subjective. It describes a social phenomena in its natural settings. Okay, and the data collection is time consuming. So what is the output of qualitative research? By doing qualitative research, you can come up with new theories. How many of you, I don't know, in the area of management have seen the theory of disruptive innovation? Clayton Christensen came up with the concept or the theory of disruptive innovation, where he identified that there are a number of innovations which are coming presently in the era of startups, which can be called as disruptive innovations. Let me tell you, it's a beautiful study. Please read Clayton Christensen's disruptive innovation theory in Harvard Business Review. He published it in Harvard Business Review, I think way back in 98, something like that. But today, world is moving ahead with disruptive innovation. We talk about Uber. Uber is the biggest disruptive innovation. We talk about Netflix. Netflix is the biggest disruptive innovation. Please read it. It is based on qualitative research. It tells you how it happens. But anyway, what is the research output of qualitative research? It is creation of new theories, explain unexplained behaviors and situations, narratives about experiences, new ways to comprehend events or behaviors, new ways to understand an event or a behavior, new ideas, understanding the inexplicable. It is qualitative research. I just want you to look at what is happening around us in the times of COVID. There was a Coimbed. There was a Coimbed where the government announced a lockdown for 4 days and people went crazy. Day before yesterday, there was a Kasimed. We know that there is corona. We know that there is high chances if you go to very what do you call congested places. We know that we will be affected. It's going to be very costly. We know that if we are going to be affected, it can affect our family and children. We know that if we are going to be affected, there might be a possibility of loss of life. Still, there was a Kasim. What is this which is motivating people to move out and go to such a heavily congested area in the middle of COVID? No one really understands. If you try to give a questionnaire there, won't make sense. So what you require is a researcher who tries to find out what is motivating these people. How did these people dare to go there? How did they get the strength to say that, okay, I'm going to go and buy fish? Come on, it's just fish. So what is phenomena? Explaining the inexplainable is what qualitative research tries to do. So definition, let me not spend too much time on definition. It's an inquiry process of understanding based on distinct methodological traditions of inquiry, exploring a social or human problem. Researcher builds a complex, holistic picture, analyzes words, reports detailed views of informants, conducts the study in natural settings, so on and so forth. We'll be discussing all this as we go forward. Okay. What are the types of qualitative research? One, phenomenology, ethnology, grounded theory, case study. I'm very sure all of you are aware of case study. And of course, a few of you who are involved into research would know what is grounded theory. A few of you who try to explain research from its very background would know about ethnography. Phenomenology is describing a phenomena. What happened? Okay, so let's just go forward very shortly into what is phenomenology. Literally means study of a phenomena. Phenomena may be an event, situation, experience. Okay, you are attending a Rahman concert. It's an experience, and that experience is indescribable. You listen to all your favorite songs. You see people going crazy around you. You see an environment charged with the electricity of music. It's like unbelievably inexplainable experience. So when you have such a phenomenon, how can you explain this phenomenon? How can you explain the crazy intuition of people who used to get just mad when Michael Jackson used to come on the stage? Not easy to explain. So how do you understand this phenomena? Qualitative research helps you understand phenomena. It may not give you definitive explanations. It may not give you 1 + 1 = 4, but it gives you an increased insight into understanding why it's happening, what is happening. Just recently, I heard a child who was blamed by the father saying that you got COVID and I'm spending so much on you. That boy jumped from the hospital and ended his life. What would have, he is not a suicidal person. What would have actually prompted him to do that? Maybe again, we can't give this is the exact reason. But yes, we can try to understand what might have incited him to do that, gain an insight into the medical and psychological situation that was being faced by that person, leading to a particular response, which might have been crucial and fatal. So, understanding a phenomena. Grounded theory. Grounded theory is where you're talking about an already established theory. Like, for example, motivation theories are already established. Maslow is established, Herzberg is established, let's say McClelland is established. Now, these are basic grounded theories which are deeply grounded in research. When you are using this theory or these theories to come with your own small modification, you depend on what is called as the qualitative research. Badrinath Pawar sir, I was Professor Badrinath Pawar, the best in India as far as grounded theory is concerned, theory building is concerned. I was very, very lucky to listen to him or attend a workshop given by him in IIM Ahmedabad. And he is one person who tries to build a concept or a theory. And building this concept or a theory cannot be done with math, cannot be done with numbers. You need to understand the theory, you need to investigate the theory, you need to investigate people, phenomena, situations, events, and ultimately you come up with a theory. So, how to develop this theory? The method is qualitative. Ethnography is people, background of people, portrait of people, their cultures, their geographic and a particular region, their religion, the tribe, the community, the shared experiences. So when you are trying to understand how a community reacts, how a set of people react, how a generation reacts, X generation, Y generation, Z generation, whatever it might be, how does a generation react? How does a generation process something and take it? Like, for example, using of a smartphone. Using of a smartphone becomes so simple for the present day kids also. But take a later generation, let's say my father's generation or my mother's generation, they have to learn it. And they have to learn it, they have to give their full understanding, whereas the same technology is just understood by the younger generation without any kind of actual practice, or without taking lessons, or without doing anything specifically towards that particular activity. So what actually helps a person to learn, get to know the ethnography, that you can do with the help of qualitative research, and of course case study. You can take up case study. Kasimedu can become a case. Coimbatore can become a case. Okay, Chennai, Kodambakam can become a case. So take up a case study, talk to people, try to collect information. Series of interviews, you may be able to come up with some understanding of what is happening, why are the cases rising there, why not in other places. So why? That understanding of that why can be understood with the help of quantitative research using a particular area or a particular individual or a particular institution. Whenever you're using specifically one entity, whether an institution or an area or an individual, you are going for a case study. So understanding with the help of a case study is also qualitative nature. Now, how do you collect the data? See, you are using a questionnaire. You're using a questionnaire. One question was, what is the thumb rule for a question? Now, through some of the discussions with some professors, it is said that, again, I am not trying to, I'm not trying to say exactly, but it is said that if you have a questionnaire with 40 items, 40 items means questions, into 9 can be a thumb rule for your sample. 40 into 9 can become your sample. That's one. Second, this I came across during one of the sessions in IIM Ahmedabad. They say that when you are crossing, when your sample is crossing 300, when your sample is going above 300, generally the sample will be good sample, because when the sample crosses 300, normality is easily achieved. Once the sample is going 400, 500, 600, normality becomes more strong. Okay, there are exceptions to rule. Even with 1,000 sample, you may not get normality. That is also possible. But if you want to know, once you've collected a sample of 600, there's no actual necessity to go into a particular methodology and decide on your sample size. Check the normality. Simple way to assert whether your sample is perfect or not, check the normality. Go for a line diagram, go for a what do you call a scatter plot, go for construction of a normal distribution curve, check the outliers. If your outliers are less than 5%, your sample is normal. A very, very simple way of establishing your normality. Anyway, coming back to qualitative research. Qualitative research basically collects the sample using observations, interviews, focus groups, and documented analysis. Right. So, what is observation? You have a participant observation. Remember, I told you about this professor who observed the community of thieves, the Stewartpuram thieves, as they're called, or the Chambal dacoits, is a huge group again in India. So, he involved with them, he participated with them, and he tried to find out what it was. So, participant observation, external participation, passive participation, balanced participation. This is your degree of involvement. External participation, where you just observe via your televisions, video tubes, CCTV cameras, you can do external participation. Passive participation, where you participate in the observation but you don't interact. Balanced participation means the researcher maintains a balance between being an insider and an outsider. You interact a little, you observe a little. So either ways, you can observe and you keep on taking notes. You keep on taking notes. Active participation is where you jump into the process. Let me give you one more example. Navdeep Mathur is the professor of qualitative research in IIM. When this situation belongs to 2009 or even before that, I think. Okay, so when there's a river Sarayu which flows through Ahmedabad. So Narendra Modi at that time was the chief minister of Gujarat, and he wanted to clear the banks of the river because they flow through. They create a very a very difficult picture because slums are there on either sides of the banks of the river, and river flows through from the middle of the city. He was trying to make Ahmedabad look beautiful, so he wanted to remove the slums. He wanted to relocate the slums somewhere. When he wanted to do this, the slum people were not ready to move. I mean, everywhere. Some people will say, why should we move? We have been staying here for so many years, 100 years or so. So how can we move? Your city came afterwards, you move. So when this kind of an argument comes, no one can say. So at that point of time, Navdeep Mathur sir, along with 4 IIM students of IIM Ahmedabad, 4 students and Navdeep Mathur sir, all the 5 of them, they went to the slums, they rented a shed there, they stayed in the shed for 5 months. For these 5 months, they stayed in the shed, they interacted with the people, they ate with them, they cooked with them, they used to take their bath in that place, they used to come to IIM Ahmedabad, again go back in the evening to the same place. So these people were basically involving themselves for a long period of time. 5 months, they were there. They were eating with them, they were talking to them, evening participating in their in the slums regular activities, small cultural functions. So they became actively involved in that area, and they talked to the people. They told them that we have come for this purpose, we want to talk to you. They talked to the people in their natural settings, where people come out of their comfort zones and give out their very, very true, valid observations. And ultimately, they presented a report in such a way that the government was able to take meaningful action. And now, let me tell you, all the slums are clear. The slums have been relocated. People have moved away. But a huge onus goes to this professor and the 4 IIM students who spent their time there to find out the real reasons, not the overall reasons, but the real reasons. We say that whatever is a problem, the manifestation is only 1/3 of the iceberg. Okay, the 3 parts of the iceberg of the problem is underwater. So finding out that 3 parts is more important than analyzing the 1 part. And finding out the 3 parts is what is done by qualitative research. So active participation, total participation is about directly, falling into it. Then the next one is direct observation. One observation style is indirect, where you try to observe without the other person knowing. But the second one is a direct observation style, where you're trying to say that, okay, hey you, I'm observing you. You please do your job. Yeah, the person will be conscious of you for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Then the person becomes normal. And as you keep observing the person for 10 years, 10 days, 15 days, the person becomes actually used to you, and he or she comes out with true behavior. Now, this is also called as shadowing. This is also, one way of observing and collecting data. Now, this observation cannot be totally free of little biases, but there is a possibility, but there is an ecological validity in direct observation, because the other person also knows that you are observing. So there is an acceptance between you and the person whom you are observing and collecting. Anyway, interviews. You have different interviews: informal, structured, semi-structured, structured interviews. So when you are collecting data, you can have an informal interview where you start with a question and go according to the way he answers. Unstructured is totally, you can ask anything, everything, make a person feel comfortable and go into the background, go into unrelated things, discuss movies, and then maybe slowly try to understand from which angle the individual is trying to come and come to the real issue as such. Or you can have a simple structured questionnaire where you have a set of questions before you, you ask those questions, you collect the data, and you record that particular data. Now I'll be telling you how to record the data. So okay, there is another methodology of collecting qualitative data, which is called focus group. A focus group can be a group where you can have 6 to 10 people in a particular group, and these people are being observed. Like, for example, if you remember the experiments conducted by Elton Mayo, he took a group of 20 women, he put them in a separate the electrical experiments, Western Electrics. So he took those 20 women, he put them into a separate room, and he started reducing, increasing the lighting, whereby he wanted to find out whether increased light or reduced light has an impact on performance and productivity. And he came up with a serendipitous finding that these women are reacting not to the lighting, but to something called recognition. It is serendipity because he was talking about physical surroundings, and what he came up with is totally a psychological impact. Okay, so this observation is for a focus group. You identify a group, you create a group based on what are the requirements you require in the particular group. So select people very, very carefully, set them into a group, put them on the job, and as they are interacting as a group, you note down the observations. Focus group or a document analysis. Now, this is a little difficult. Content analysis, take up the studies in the past 10 years and try to analyze the studies. Discourse analysis is take up conversations. You are conversing with your with your seniors or subordinates or your case studies, people whom you are interviewing. Record their conversations, listen to the discourse, how it is happening. When you asked a question, was there a straight answer, direct answer, indirect answer, roundabout answer? What was the way the answer was given? What was the words used? Where was the stress placed? Where was the pause given? So all these, the interpretations of your oculesics, your voice combinations and permutations gives you certain, like, see, when I'm ready to answer something, someone asks you a question, you're raring to go, you're ready to answer, and you are like sitting at the edge of your seat and say, okay, he finishes the question, you shoot the answer. Many of you would have faced this in the class when some student knows the answer. When some student is trying to avoid something, you know what comes first, and all those little ways to delay. Okay, so what are these and ahs? So discourse analysis, historical analysis. Take a case study of historically how did Tata develop, how did Tatas move from 1905 when they went into their first hotel to today nano. So maybe what is happening in nano, the response of consumer towards nano can be traced back to historical issues. So historical analysis of printed or pictorial material. Printed material, you can take printed material, analyze it. You can take pictorial material, you can take 10 advertisements of nano and try to analyze how these 10 advertisements would have actually impacted the consumer, either leading to buying nano or not buying nano, or 10 articles written about nano in business line and how they would have impacted the share prices of nano. So what can you do? You can do a lot. You can do a lot in qualitative analysis. So document analysis is another method of collecting information, collecting data for qualitative analysis. Now, what is the process of qualitative research? I know I'm going very fast because each one actually deserves I mean, if I were taking a class, the whole points which I discussed just now would be one class. But anyhow, what is the process of qualitative research? Establish your purpose. The purpose of Navdeep sir was to understand why people, or what can make people to move from the banks of the river in Ahmedabad. That's the purpose. More than that, he doesn't know anything. Go into conceptual context. So conceptual context, he went into motivation. What motivates these people? What is stopping these people? What is impacting their mindsets? How to explain their mindsets? Conceptual context. Formulate your research questions. After staying with them for 1 month, he was able to formulate his research questions, saying that, okay, if these people want to move or don't want to move, what can make them to move? So he started formulating the research questions, then identified the method. Should I take up ethnography? Should I take up phenomenology? What method? Once you identify the method, you identify your data collection method. So should I, should I go for focus group, interviews, direct observations? What should I go for? Or document analysis, or a combination of all these methods. And ultimately, validating your data, which will come towards the very end. So yes, the qualitative research. Purpose of qualitative research, we have a litmus test, thumb rule. When you want to know the purpose of qualitative research, 1, you try to understand what are you studying in terms of your benefit and the person who is being studied or the situation who is being studied from that point of view. So qualitative research demands 2 points of view. 1, what is your focus? What is the focus of the other person who is involved in this particular study? Both sides. That's your first thing, which decides your purpose. 2, go for formative evaluations. Formative evaluation is, like, for example, are you comfortable with your boss? Answer can be yes, no, to some extent in a quantitative research. If I say yes and 10 people say 10 yeses, in quantitative research it is 10 yes, 2 no, and 3 to an extent. That's all. 10 yes, 2 no, 3 to an extent. But what is qualitative research telling you? It is telling you go for formulative evaluation. This is just a quantitative evaluation where you're saying that 80% of the respondents have said yes. But what is formulative evaluation is, why have they said yes? What motivated them to say yes? So what is the story behind the yes? What is the story behind the no? What is the story behind the to some extent? When you're going to that, you're going for formulative evaluations. And ultimately, the third point in a qualitative research, identifying the purpose, is go for action research, collaborative or action research. Qualitative research can never be where I can just take a questionnaire, create a Google link, send to 100 people, collect data. Not done. I have to be a part of it. And that is qualitative research. So I need to be a part of the research. I need to collaborate in the research. I need to immerse myself in the research to some extent. May not be fully, at least partially. I need to do that. So if all these 3 points are satisfied, then your litmus test is done. You know the purpose of your research. Once you know the purpose of your research, what is the role of concept? What is the role of concept? This is also called theoretical framework for a study. Now, in a quantitative research, what are you doing? You are taking your study and you're trying to understand the theories behind the study. Like, for example, my study or my PhD was job satisfaction of women academicians. Women academicians, why did I choose them? I used qualitative concepts because I myself am a women academician. I would know a little more about the understanding of women academicians. That was my motivation, my purpose. The second is job satisfaction. So when I'm taking job satisfaction, I identified the variables of job satisfaction, the constructs of job satisfaction. When I identified the constructs of job satisfaction, I went into the theory behind the constructs. I went into motivation theories, I went into social capital theory, I went into relative capital theory, a number of theories which are actually going to support my study. Theories are spotlights. They tell you where to focus upon. Theories is like your coat hook. You know where to put your study. Okay. Maybe, you know, when I talk to my scholars, I say coat hook is a very, very English concept. So I say theory is like your popu dabba. You know what is what in that dabba, so very clearly identified. So if I want a particular item, I'll just pick up that. So theory makes your research like that. It compartmentalizes and perfectly puts it into a particular format. So that's the role of theory. And theory gives you background. When you want to prove something, when you want to support something, when you want to justify something, when you want to question something, go back to theory. So if I say that my managers are motivated by the expressions of their subordinates, go back to motivation theory. Which theory is talking about superiors and subordinates? Maybe I can go to Herzberg's theory where I'm talking about motivators. So theory always gives you the background. So understanding that is very important even for qualitative. Now I've tried to take one theory and I've tried to explain to you how you do it in a qualitative manner. For example, this is the most famous leadership managerial grid theory, which is designed by Blake and Moutan. Now, Blake and Moutan simply say that a leader can be 1-9 position, 9-9 position, 1-1 position, or 9-1 position, or a 5-5 position. Now, 9-9 position is a team leader. A 1-9 position is a country club leader. Middle management role is a 5-5 position, a person who is a middle manager. Impoverished leader who does not bother about anything is a 1-1 position. 9-1 position who focuses on authority task is a 9-1 position. Now, this is the theory. Now, my study is I have taken 10 case studies of 10 major managers of India. Now, I can't give them a questionnaire. Sorry, Sundar Pichai is not going to answer a questionnaire. So, if I want to understand the leadership style of Sundar Pichai, I need to interview him. It's as simple as that. Now, how do I do that? I need to create a perceptual map. In the map, what am I taking? In the map, I'm trying to go into whatever is related to leadership. Okay, let's take leadership context on the the left hand side. The leadership context means organization. Sundar Pichai and his organization, the culture of Sundar Pichai in terms of India and America, the economic aspects which may influence him in a number of ways. Come to right side, I can take up leadership roles, whether the leader, what kind of a leader is Sundar Pichai? Is he a beacon, a rock, a support, a friend, a beggar who says, hey, please do this job now, I'll give you a good salary? That can be your impoverished leader. Okay, so or tacitly he's an advocate, exploiter. You listen to me, you have to do whatever I ask you. That becomes an authoritarian leader. So what kind of a leader? The perceived roles. Okay, my questioning is to be based on this particular map. When I go to the CEO and I start asking him questions, I need to frame my questions on this. I can't ask him, are you a rock, are you a friend, are you a beacon, or are you a beggar? No, I can't ask him directly that. But I have to frame a question which will try to make him to answer that particular point. So what do you do, sir, in this kind of a situation? What kind of motivation will you use for your employees, or something like that, which is actually going to get you the responses. So similarly, the sources of your knowledge, from where are you going to pick up the information? From the teaching side or from the family side, the books that you read about leadership or your coursework, whatever it might be. So the most important thing that we need to do is we need to create this concept map. And once you know what is the concept map, asking questions is very easy. So what are these questions? How do you formulate the questions? Develop the questions based on your roadmap. Okay, so you say that I'll start with the context, then I'll go to perceived leader roles, then I'll go into tactical behaviors, then I'll go into strategic behaviors, then I'll go into sources. So create a roadmap for your questions. Iterate. Iterate means refine the questions. Once I've given the questions, I've created the questions, ask the questions to someone, do a kind of a pilot study. Ask the questions to someone, your friends, your known CEOs, refine them, make them better, because you can't go with a set of questions which are untested directly to the top person. So iterate the questions, refine the questions. A good set of research questions will evolve, as sometimes when you're talking to your main subject, you may come up with ancillary sudden questions. So those questions, note them down, move from general to specific, create a narrative pattern of asking the question. Narrative, like a story. start at the beginning. Sir, what were your experiences at the very beginning of your career? Did you face any problems? So start at some begin point and have an end point. So start with the beginning, listing entry questions, experiences, descriptors, etc., etc. Listening to narrative questions is very important because you need to note down very, very clearly, and breaking up the components of questions by observing, recording, analyzing, labeling, coding, keywording. Maybe he uses certain words which are keywords. So he's using the word vision very much. He's using the word takeaways very much. He's using the word, let's say assertive very much. So there might be certain keywords. There might be certain codes that you have to develop in the very beginning itself. So if he's talking about his background, you have a code called background. If he's talking, when he's answering, he's trying to go into the issue, you have a code called issue. So start designing codes and record accordingly. Agreed that you cannot do everything at one go. So you need to record the interview also, so that you can once again listen to the interview and try to clarify your codes, fine tune your codes, and put them into a perfect analysis pattern. When you're going to analysis pattern, analysis of biographical data, the date and event. When did you start your career? When did you get your first promotion? When did you do this? When did you do that? First, have a structure of the date, event. Important date, what happened on that particular date. So date or year and the event. So when did you have your first biggest issue with your boss? When did the first time you realize that subordinates can be vindictive, or things like that? Date, event. First create that biographical data. Then go towards theme. The theme is a theme has to be identified when you're listening to the person. So maybe the initial theme can be historical theme. The second theme can be observation theme. The third theme can be justification theme. Identify. Go into social constructionist methodology. That is, once you listen to the whole interview, come back home, sit comfortably, think, and say, okay, how am I going to now construct the story? So construct the whole case as to what was asked, how did he narrate it in a proper detailed manner with all the extra questions, your observations, his additions, his deletions. There might be a point where he says that, okay, I forgot something. So he forgot something and he said it here. What actually made him to remember? What was he talking about at that particular point of time which made him to remember this forgotten fact? So maybe there's a relation, maybe there's a link. So understand those links, okay? Listen, create a flow, then go for analysis of textual locations. Once you create the total chart with you, you can use a simple Excel method, or there is a software also, I'll tell you about it. Then ultimately, self-presentation of the interview. What do you feel? How do you record your ideas, your insights? Your last column should be your understanding of the total thing. See, when a person is answering something, immediately you'll get an idea. Okay, maybe this is related to that. Note it. Don't think it that you will write it at the end, you will forget it. So identify your self-presentation of that particular interview. You have the source here. If you want to refer to in a detailed pattern, you can go there. Coding. When you are coding the data, which is verbal, not numerical, verbal. How do you code the data? You need to code the data using open coding. Then you have axial coding, then you have selective. So we'll go into what is open coding. Open coding is, once you have written down the total interview, you have a passage with you. Now for each descriptive, you can give a label. Each label, you give a code. Like each descriptive. Sometimes when the person is answering, a person may be using analytical answers. Sometimes a person may be using what is called as emotional answers. Sometimes the person whom you are interviewing is trying to manipulate you, manipulative ones. So I give an abstract codes like justification, manipulation, emotional. So justification, I give code 1, manipulation, I give code 2, emotional, I give code 3. So that way, develop a system of labels and codes. It's easier for you to understand at a later date. And maybe you can go a little into creating an algorithm or creating a regression, what you call a regression equation, when you go for a final analysis, there is a possibility you can do that also. Okay, that's open coding. Axial coding is where you refine the codes. Okay, after you study, like, factor analysis, what are you doing? You are taking all the factors which come into one and you give them a name. So similarly, in axial coding, what you do is, after the open coding is done, you take all the codes and say, some codes are repetitive. Some codes can be mixed. Some codes can be combined. Some can be amalgamated. Some can be made into one code. Identify it. That's axial coding. Ultimately, selective code. Okay, what coding is related to what event in his life? What coding is related to what decision taken by him as the CEO? So when you do that, we're going to selective. So you do open, then you do axial, then you can go for selective. Okay, what is this? This is actually Qualitative Data Analysis MINER LITE. It's a free qualitative data analysis software. What is this software? In this software, you can upload your Excel, okay, and import it into the software. That is, you create an Excel after you do the interview, take the Excel, import it into the software, and then what does the software do? It takes your information, codes it. It can do the coding. You also don't have to do it. It can do the coding. It can create a tree structure, a tree diagram, or like you have the fishbone, or you have any such. So it creates a tree structure, as it is called. It uses the Boolean logic. What is Boolean logic? Boolean logic is when you have 2 or 3 codes which are intersecting with each other. Take away the intersections and identify 3 different. Now, in statistical analysis, what do you call this? You call this, you are saying that you are doing what is called as confirmatory factor analysis, where you're saying that you are creating 3 or 4 factors which are very strong, which are not again correlating. Okay, so when you are doing a proper confirmatory factor analysis, if you take the data and put it into correlation, your correlation will be less than 0.5, which means to say that each construct is independent of other. So that is what is done by Boolean logic here. The Boolean logic says that when you have very, very strongly correlated constructs, take the constructs, put them into Boolean logic, remove the intercommonalities, and create separate constructs. Okay, then the software will also create bar charts, pie diagrams, stack clouds. All this will be done. Okay, and you can export the tables in the form of XLS, tab, CSV formats, or a Word format also. So this is one very, very freely available software. If you're doing qualitative research, you can use this software. Mind you, what I did today is absolutely not enough if you really want to take up a software-based research. It requires a lot of work. So maybe towards the end, or I can share the books and the links related to this to the organizers, and they can pass the same to you, to the participants. Okay. So how does the flow go? The flow of qualitative research: establish the analytical question. Okay, that's the desk job. You are sitting at the desk, you study the existing literature, identify the analytical question. Second, go design the format, design your research. This is also desk work. Sometimes when you are designing the format, you may go back to your analytical questions also. From there, you go to field work. You go into the field, you go into interviews, or you go into discussions, or you go into focus group, or you go into experimentation. Okay, so do the field work. When you do the field work, you access the local knowledge, you observe, participate, interview, collect data, whatever. Sometimes this might again lead to the first step. You may have to change your questions once again. Okay, if not, go next to the desk work. Take all the information collected, analyze the language, the objects, the acts. So whatever information you have collected, code them, recode them, create segments, analyze them, report the findings, presentation for. This is basically the process of what is called as qualitative research. Okay, as I told you before itself, I'll just give you a very, very light format. This is for the beginners only, please. So these people, when you're starting with your research, what can you do as far as quantitative analysis is concerned? Many people, I have seen them, they will mix, they will mix in the sense, first hypothesis will come, then the normal testing will come, then suddenly Cronbach alpha will come. But there is a format, there is a flow. So how do you start? Any research, please do a pilot study, because a pilot study is the only way with which you can understand whether you're going in the right way or not. Maybe after pilot study, you will have to change your questions. Maybe after pilot study, you will have to reframe your questions, or maybe after pilot study, you will know where you are going wrong in the data analysis. So pilot study, more than 30 sample. Take more than 30 sample compulsorily. Okay. Then once the data is collected, check for the normality of the data. Check for the normality of the data. Simple univariate sample, you go for Shapiro-Wilks test that is there in your SPSS. Or if you have non-probability based multivariate sample. If you have non-probability, that is you have used convenience sampling or you have used any non-probability sample. How do you check the normality of your data? Because the first thing they ask you if your data is non-probability, they'll ask you, is your data normal or not? So check the normality by using, there are very pre-estimation test is one of the ways to check normality of non-probability multivariate sampling, but that's a bit high. If you want to do it simple, go for a line chart, take the data, put it into SPS, go to descriptives. Okay, do a line chart, scatter plot, descriptive, go for mean, median, kurtosis, skewness. So you understand the median, kurtosis, skewness, you know how dispersed is your data or how robust is your data. Create the bell curve. When you are creating the bell curve, after you create the bell curve, take the construct to a simple correlation. Once you do the simple correlation, you know your R value should be less than 5. Generally, we say that correlation should be high, but in this case, it should be less than 5 because you're trying to say that your basic constructs are independent. Okay, identify the missing values and outliers. That also can be very simply done through experiences. Then identify Cronbach alpha. Mind you, Cronbach alpha need not be done for all variables. Cronbach alpha is only for independent variables. Variables which are independent, which will not change. The dependent will change based on the independent. If there's a mediator, mediator will change based on the independent. If there's a moderator, moderator will change, will have an impact. So please do Cronbach alpha only for independent variables. That's enough. Any Cronbach alpha above 8 in social sciences research is good. Okay, sometimes there are cases, specific articles are there where a Cronbach alpha of 6 is also, 0.6 is also accepted, but that is very specific. You will have to support such a result with a proper literature review. Then go for factor analysis. If your instrument is a non-tested, unscientific instrument, you have designed it, go for factor analysis. Factorize. Once you factorize, you will get to know what questions can be removed due to common loadings or improper loadings or whatever. Okay, and you will have only those questions which are perfect, robust, which need to be used for further analysis. Do a factor analysis. But let us say if it is a tested instrument, you are taking the instrument of someone. Let me tell you once again, please use tested instruments. There are instruments for everything and anything available. In fact, one of my scholars very recently, she was doing a study on emotional intelligence and employability. There was an employability scale designed by one professor from the US. We didn't get the scale anywhere. So what we did was, we wrote to the professor saying that, Madam, we require the scale for this particular job. She asked us for the summary of our PhD thesis. We sent her the summary. She sent us the scale along with the permission to use it. People are ready to help. I get a number of requests asking for full text article, my article. Okay, and in a private message, I send them the full text. I don't send them publicly because sometimes the journal may not accept it. So private, I send them the full text because it is the job of everyone who is in research to help the other person. So people are there who are doing this. So please write to them. Every article will have underneath the email link. If it is not there, Google that. You will get the email. Write to them. They will send you the instrument. Using a tested instrument is the best way to avoid any kind of mistakes in your data collection and the robustness of your question. Tested instruments, go for content validity, CFA, discriminant analysis, construct validity. With that, you will be done as far as the thing is concerned, the instrument is concerned. Then, of course, a very important thing that you have to do nowadays is you have to go for common bias method. What is common bias method? Common bias method is to remove external biases on data collection. What is an external bias? An external bias can be called by negligence. I'm not filling the questionnaire properly, so there can be an external bias. An external bias can be caused by misunderstanding of the question or by emotions. So to remove this, go for common bias method. Everyone is asking about common bias method nowadays. I mean, I myself came to know about this only around 8 years ago. Before that, even I had no idea of what is common bias method. But somewhere around 2012, I came across it and I studied it a lot. So when we are talking about common bias method, the need for common bias method is to test the dimensionality of a construct, whether the construct is unidimensional. So to test that, you go to the test of CFA, confirmatory factor analysis, using SPSS, Herman's single factor test. Herman's single factor test is the most simple common test for checking the common bias in SPSS. Any YouTube video will tell you how to do this. Any YouTube video, it's very simple. The variance should be less than 50. That is the only thing that you have to consider. After this comes the data analysis. Till here, mind you, you are only making your data strong. You are making your instrument strong. Now comes hypothesis testing. Now comes model testing. Now comes, if the model is, let's say, a simple model, you can do it using AMOS, SEM, structural equation modeling, or if the model is a complex one, you go for PLS. PLS sometimes presently is not being preferred, so you go for the next method called process macro. Process macro can also be done using AMOS and SPSS. So these are the different methods, or this is actually a small roadmap of how you can do your quantitative analysis. I think I crossed my time a little. So I'll stop it here. I hope I made sense in whatever was the time provided to me. I once again take this opportunity to thank NGR University and Manivanan sir for giving me this opportunity of sharing some of my thoughts with you. If there's anything you'd like to question, you may. Thank you, sir.
Excellent. Thanks, madam. It's a wonderful flow, I can say. It is something like a PhD thesis where that IIT people like that. It was there, madam. Really, we are appreciating the efforts taken by you, the flow, the quality, your delivery style, that knowledge level, depth of knowledge, everything is awesome, madam. Really, we are proud. At this moment, I missed in that introduction. Just I wanted to tell our beloved participants that in SRM University, for all the PhD scholars, I heard that Dr.Praseeda madam will be the person who handles research methodology topic for most of the years. For the past 6-7 years, she is handling the topic. Really, I am proud to have such a eminent person, such a resourceful person handling the session for our STTP, to our beloved participants. A great moment for all of us. Really, we are thankful to you, madam.
Thank you, sir.
Yes,
Thank you.
I think our beloved participants are permitted to pose the questions. In mixed research, can we use both research questions and hypotheses?
Yes, yes. I don't know who is the person who asked the question. Yes, you can use both the methods. In fact, I mean, given an opportunity, I can take a session for mixed research only, because mixed research is where you need to be very, very careful. At what level do you want to use your qualitative techniques, and from where are you going to use your quantitative? I hope you remember, I told you, your qualitatives can be used to create a regression equation. Once you create the regression equation and give a numerical coding to the qualitative data, you can go into quantitative analysis. But a very, very important role is played in the way you code the data. You code the data and you create that Excel sheet, which can be later transformed or exported into SPSS, and you can take up quantitative research. It can be done.
Vidya, can you continue? Vidya, can you ask madam the questions? Can you moderate?
Yes, sir, I'll do that.
There was someone who asked whether you can take up qualitative data in sociology. Sociology, let me tell you, ethnography is the best method. I mean,
Vidya, you can mute. Vidya, you can mute. Madam will take care. Vidya, you can mute yourself.
You know, the best way to take up research in sociology, for me, if you ask me, it would be ethnography as a method, okay, and focus group and interviews as the techniques of collecting data. You can do excellent studies. The only problem is in India, traditionally people are comfortable with quantitative. Qualitative and sonodine, they are like a little apprehensive. Many people don't even know how to analyze. So that may be a problem. Yeah, sorry, there was some question about coding of data. Field of law, also you can use qualitative, sir. In fact, let us say if you're taking up law and you have something like, juvenile offenders, like you have sexual offenders in the case of many of the, case of many of rape incidents, most of them are below 16. So such people, you can't do quantitative. You have to take up qualitative. And when you have to take up qualitative, the best way to understand this would be, going for intensive case studies. Case study method can be used. Take up 10 cases within, let's say, age group of 16 to 18 from different areas, north, south, east, west of India, and take up at least 3 cases from each area and start your work. I think you'll be very, you can come up with a perfect step. Some questions are coming and disappearing as I'm answering, so really. Selecting Cronbach alpha. Sorry, there was a question regarding Cronbach alpha. Can you read it, Vidya?
Sir,
Yes. Yes, I am also looking for that question. It is disappearing.
Actually,
Madam, are you telling about this question, sir? What are the criteria to be held in mind while selecting Cronbach alpha and Cohen kappa for reliability testing? Do you mean that question?
I don't know. I think it disappeared actually.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. See, basically, whenever you are using Cronbach alpha or any one of the tests, you have to keep in mind that you are testing the what do you call the construct or let us say the strength of a particular construct. So if you want your constructs to be strong, okay, you take up either Cronbach alpha or any one of these methods. That again, the choice of the method depends upon what might be your model. Is it a direct simple model? Is it a mediated model? Is it a moderated model? Or is it a mediated moderated model? Okay, so sometimes it so happens that independent variable may actually become a mediated variable at a later stage of the research. So depending upon this, you may have to change your techniques. But the most important fact is Cronbach alpha or any one of those methods can be done only for those variables which are strong, where you want to test the strength of the construct. That the constructs are not overlapping. They are totally independent, strong in their way. So they will impact others, but they will not be impacted. That is the focus that has to be made. What are the limitations of qualitative research? The limitations of qualitative research are basically the investigator bias is the biggest limitation. So in grounded theory research example, I'll give you. So investigator bias is because in qualitative research, generally I am listening to a person. I'm listening to a person. Okay, I'll tell you one small example. When I was collecting my data for one of my articles, I gave a questionnaire and I sat with them when they are filling the questionnaire. And when they were filling the questionnaire, this happened when I was a very young researcher, not now. So when they were filling the questionnaire, they were asking me, Madam, what is the meaning of this question? In the question, eppadi answer pannalam, the question, eppadi answer pannalam. And I was telling them. So at one point of time, my professor noticed this and stopped me and saying that, see, when you are explaining the question to them, you are explaining from your point of view. Let them look at the question, let them understand it, and let them answer. Don't explain that question. I was thinking I'm helping the other person because they were not basically people who could speak English. So I was just translating it into local language because the questionnaire was in English. But what he said was, ma'am, don't do that. Give a questionnaire in Telugu or local language if you want. But don't try to explain anything. When you are explaining, you are putting your idea into their mind. This is a problem both with quantitative and qualitative approaches. But in qualitative and quantitative, we should try to reduce the bias. How to reduce the bias? There are different techniques. both in qualitative and quantitative. Okay, grounded theory. The best example of a grounded theory. For example, each subject will have its own theoretical basis. Like for example, let's say in HR, if you were to take up, because my area is basically HR, if you were to take up HR, in each and every area of HR, there is a grounded theory. Okay, for example, motivation theories are grounded theories. Okay, leadership theories are grounded theories. Strong theories which are already created and which became the basis for further research to be held. So if I want further, for example, I am testing the emotional intelligence, I should go to social capital theory, I should go to relational theory, because these are the theories which are going to impact the emotions of an individual. So how they will impact, I can go to Freudian theories. Freud is a very, very strong person who has established grounded theories in psychology. The question is disappeared. Okay. So anyway, the grounded theories are theories which will directly relate to your study. Please remember one thing. When you want to know which is the grounded theory which is most applicable to you, take the review of literature. Please don't take any one of the journals which are not worth it. My focus would be go for a Sage, go for an Elsevier, go for, good journals. They will always give you theoretical background. Articles in these journals will give you theoretical backgrounds. So look at the theory that they have used and see whether you can link those theories to your work. Because naturally you will collect your review of literature only related to your study. So what are the theories used by them can be used by you in terms of your ground. Any other question? No, there are.
Could you please convey the key differences between content and thematic analysis procedurally?
Content and thematic analysis procedure. Okay. Content analysis is, for example, if I'm studying the industrial policy resolutions and their impact on the new startup policy, okay, a Make in India policy. So I take up the industrial policy resolutions from 1951 onwards. So I take all the policy resolutions, then I take the arguments on the policy resolutions, then I take the implications on the policy resolutions, okay, then I take the implementations of the policy. Please remember, what am I taking? I'm taking the policy, I'm taking the arguments on the policy, I'm taking the implementation of the policy, I'm taking the publications on the policy, right? So I am creating already 4 to 5 themes. Okay, so when I take the policy, just the policy, I'm trying to understand how the policy has changed from 51 to, let's say, 55 to 61 to whatever, okay, up to 1991, the last industrial resolution policy. Then next, I convert it into the discussions that took place in the policy in the parliamentary committee. Each one is very, very clearly recorded. So I can take the discussions and I can identify the points that were discussed and similarity of points between the 1951 policy to 55 policy to 61 policy to 65 to 75 or whatever up to 1991. Okay, then what was the implementation? How did they happen? Where did they go wrong or right or whatever? Then ultimately I go into publications which have come in the last 10 years or the last 20 years on this particular area. Because if I take the publications only from the last 10 years, I'll be talking only about 1991 industry policy. So go back a little, take publications, and then try to focus upon the arguments raised for and against the policy. So I'm taking the content, I'm developing themes for my analysis. I hope I made sense.
Thank you, ma'am. How far the halo effect impact qualitative research outcomes?
Sorry, what impact?
Halo, H-A-L-O, halo or halo?
Halo effect. First of all, what is halo effect? I want you to understand that. Halo effect is where one positive character influences the total evaluation of an individual. One positive character. Horn effect is where one negative character influences the total evaluation of an individual. So let us say when I'm doing a case study, I go for the interview of the case person. Okay, let us say, simple. I was giving you the example of teenage boys involved in rape. Now, the minute I am going there itself, I have a negative mindset. I have a negative mindset. I go with a negative mindset because rape is unpardonable at any age. Now, I go with that aggression. Now, if I am a female, the aggression is different. If I am a male interviewer, the aggression is different. I hope you understand the gender bias which comes here. So when you go there, the first thing that is actually influencing is the horn effect, the negative, one negative character, which is influencing the total evaluation. So what do I need to do? As a researcher, I need to first of all balance myself. I need to make myself open. No one else can do it. No one else can actually influence it. So I need to make myself objective. 100% may not be possible. May not be possible. It is not human to be 100% objective. Even Gautam Buddha, I mean, I have to turn into Gautam Buddha. Nothing else will make me totally objective. But to the extent possible, I should try to make myself objective, read literature, create a perspective, understand what might be the issues that can actually motivate this 16-year-old boy to do something as terrible as that, and maybe develop some kind of empathy and go. Make myself objective and go. As I said again, it's impossible to avoid bias totally, but to the extent possible, the researcher himself would have to do it. For that, study is required, understanding the situation is required, reading of literature is required, published articles is required, the supporters and the opposing views should be studied, internalized, go as an objective person. That's the maximum that we can do. Anything else? Any other question?
Yes, ma'am. Last one. How long should be the minimum duration for ethnographic study?
Ethnographic study is where you are studying a person or a community or a custom. For example, sati is a custom. Okay, it doesn't happen now. Or let's say dowry death is a custom, it's a kind of a custom which has evolved. So when you are studying a person or a custom or a tradition, you cannot have a small frame. Okay, you have to increase the time frame. Now, increasing the time frame depends upon where you want to start the study. Do you want to start the study from its origin? Might be different. Do you want to start the study now, as in, let's say, coming past 5 years? Then go back and see, or rather, you would have to take the most important change in the custom in the last 5 years, start your study. And once you start your study there, from there you trace the custom. From there you move forward with the custom. And maybe then, because ethnographic studies are studies which have to be studied in their natural setting. So if I want to understand the fears of nomadic community, Banjara community, okay, in let us say in the times of COVID, okay, where they don't have a specific place to go, or let us say I want to study what motivated thousands and thousands of people to walk thousands of kilometers to go to their houses. What happened to our migrant labor? This migration is supposed to be bigger than the partition migration which happened in India. So if I want to study this, start of the COVID, the policy would be my ethnographic study. So what makes an individual so desperate to go home when there is a problem? I mean, when there is a unidentifiable problem called COVID. Is it that I'm going to go home and be safe? I don't know, but I have to go home. That's the only thing. So that can become a beautiful ethnographic study. I hope I answered.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for a wonderful session. We're really honored to have you here as a speaker. So may I now request Dr. Manivanan to deliver the vote of thanks, please.
Thank you, Vidya.
Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Vidya. It's a great journey, great presentation, madam. Really, I'm happy to see excellent flow, and really after telling our participant, if you have some other work also, you can go like that I have mentioned in comment, but here I could see more than two-thirds actually are attending the session and listening to your question and answer. It's a great journey, madam. Great session they had, and of course a lot of positive comments I could see in our chat box. And really, I'm thankful to you, madam. Thanks for accepting our invitation. Here we wish to display our appreciation letter signed by our registrar. Kindly accept our letter.
Honor, sir. It's an honor. Thank you.
Yes, dear participants, thanks for joining. And today, I'm really happy that both the sessions went off really well, and you all have enjoyed. Due to some technical issue, yesterday we could not post our WebEx recording immediately in YouTube, and today we have solved that problem. Today recording will be immediately posted in our YouTube channel. That link will be shared in our WhatsApp group as well as our Telegram group. Of course, whatever PPT handled by our beloved speakers, Dr. A.G. Srinivasan sir and Dr. Praseeda madam will be collected and will be posted in our WhatsApp as well as Telegram group. Of course, there is no need for any attendance or feedback or anything like that. WebEx records everything. It diagnoses our present. It identifies whether we use mobile phone or laptop. That too, it diagnoses whether we are interestingly attending or muting. All the aspects are being recorded by the WebEx, and I'm grateful to the software. So, you at this moment, I request you not to worry about attendance or whatever it may be. I understand few of our participants have lost their connection due to their poor network connection, and they have joined back, and they are worried about attendance. And don't worry about that. We have recorded everything, and we will be having two examinations. One on either late evening of Wednesday or on the Thursday morning, and first examination that one will be, and the second one on after Saturday session we will post two questionnaires. Based on that, we will be selecting best participant award, and based on the score only it will be selected. That restriction for the total number of participants also we wanted to keep as 50. Beyond that, overall participation e-certificate, these two awards will be given to fellow participants. And of course, today you have maintained timing extremely well. You all have joined really 9:59 itself, and we have started with all your cooperation exactly the session at 10 a.m. Like today, it has to happen on tomorrow also. We request all the participants to stay connected on tomorrow by 9:50 or something like that. And tomorrow we will be having a session from again one more speaker from SRM University, Dr. Praseeda, head of the Department of Computer Science, will be handling a session on tomorrow. She will be handling both the sessions, session 5 as well as session 6, data analytics part 1 and data analytics part 2. Of course, she is going to give hands-on training in MATLAB. Don't worry about that. And if you have not installed, you can install later also. Trial version is free only. Like today, we will be recording the entire session on tomorrow also. So the entire video will be ever available to you in our YouTube channel, and the link will be shared, of course, in WhatsApp and Telegram group. So later also, you can, after installing Minitab, you can have hands-on experience on tomorrow's session. I think, Madam, would you say hi to our participants such that we can wind up?
Yes, sir. Thank you all participants for being here. There were some people who were asking for email IDs. You can
yes,
please.
Madam. Yes, madam. I also wanted to tell in private chat WhatsApp. I got they asked your number also. I said no, it's not officially. I can't give. I will request Praseeda madam to share her email ID if possible. I will get her like that. I have told our beloved participant. Please, madam. Please go.
So the email ID is available in the SRM website, Vadapalli campus. You can just go there. My email ID will be available. So anyone who wants to communicate with me, absolutely welcome.
Yes, official mode will be always I prescribe email communication, not in mobile phone or WhatsApp. It may not look nice. So I also recommend email only. If possible, I will post madam email ID in our WhatsApp group also. Thanks for staying connected. Thank you, madam, for joining with us and giving a wonderful day for our researchers. It's a really great day. We are looking forward from you much more events like this. Thank you, madam.
Thank you for inviting.
Thank you. Vidya, you can